You have to understand the point behind what you're saying, because if you don't understand the point, you don't really know when the point has been made, and no one else will understand either.
Welcome to Simple Sense for Small Business. And today we are talking with Tim Brown from Pulse One Media, who is also with Workforce Strategic Planning with the CDC in Atlanta, Georgia. But you're going to correct me if I'm incorrect. I met Tim on a Twitter Spaces where he was talking about confident speaking. And it got me thinking, for small business owners, how does confident speaking differ from public speaking, but how can the impact still be tremendous for small business owners in the course of any given day when they're trying to communicate with clients, prospects, strategic alliances? So Tim, thank you so much for joining. I know it was like a spur of the moment. Like I DM'd you and I was like, talk to me, let's do this. So thank you. Thank you so much. Please
Absolutely.
share everything you'd like to share with everybody.
Pulse One Media is a video production company that I have, and strategic workforce planning is what I do with the CDC. We help them identify what their workforce needs are, and we look at it from a perspective of not just here and now, but what will you need in the future.
Tim's Spaces, it's every Saturday at 11 a.m. Saturday morning. There are over 700 people that join in this, and I know that they go for about 4 hours. So how did you get started with confident speaking specifically, and how was Twitter Spaces the most valuable platform for your broadcast?
It was by virtue of me trying to understand cryptocurrency, and I saw where a lot of people were having conversations around cryptocurrency, and I wanted to understand more, get involved in that world. And I sat in on Spaces and I listened in and learned a lot during that time. And I began to venture out and explore other spaces that people were having. And I just wanted to understand what people were talking about, what they were learning, what they were sharing, how people were engaging and connecting in the spaces. And as I sat in those spaces, I would try to find opportunities that I could add value. And after several months, I began to think maybe I could do something, because there's only so much cryptocurrency I want to talk about, that I want to hear about. So I began to ponder, what could I do that could be beneficial, valuable, and have a slightly different twist than what everyone else was doing in their spaces. I thought about doing relationships, and that didn't seem to resonate as much. And my wife brought up the idea of public speaking, helping people overcome their fear of public speaking. So the topic overall was her idea. I praised the idea. I loved it initially, and I didn't jump on it right away. The co-host, Leslie Mata, that has been co-hosting with me, and we were thinking about leadership and some other things. And it came up again about public speaking and overcoming the fear. My wife brought it up again. She said, I told you, people want to be able to figure out how to overcome their fear of public speaking. So I thought about it, and I think after maybe one or two spaces, the title Confident Speaking resonated with me. And the whole point behind the confident speaking space was to help people become more confident and effective communicators, because no matter what we do in life, whether you're trying to find a job, whether you're trying to negotiate a business deal, whether you're trying to build a healthy relationship at home, you need to have the confidence to say what needs to be said, but you also need to understand how to communicate your feelings and thoughts effectively. So that's what confident speaking is about. And that's how it came about. That's how it began.
Wow. I love all of this. I think, well, first of all, your wife is awesome. Can we just agree that your wife is awesome?
I agree.
And confident speaking, I loved, as soon as I saw the space name as the title, confident speaking, it resonated with me too, because of all the areas that people need to communicate during the course of the day, whether it is business or personal. First of all, your voice is so beautiful and you're so eloquent and articulate. Have you been practicing public speaking to get to a point where you don't stammer, you don't stutter, it's just a natural gift? Or have you been practicing?
It has been definite practice. It's been very intentional. I've taught and still teach personal development classes. So I started really teaching at my church years ago. So I would teach those classes, and I would teach Bible study sometimes. And it put me in a position where I had to speak. So I believe in trying to be the best at what I do when I do something. And not that I was trying to compete with anyone, but if I'm going to be standing up in front of people, presenting information, I wanted to be comfortable with myself and also make sure that I was providing the information in a manner that people would be able to understand it and hopefully connect with so that it was valuable, because I understand what it's like to be in a presentation and you're listening to someone and you can't wait for it to end. And I did not want to be that guy. I feel like I understand how to connect with people, and it doesn't have to be super vibrant, but it's about understanding what people are wanting to hear, how they need to hear it, and just being relatable. And that's what I try to do. But over time, I've always asked my wife for feedback. Whenever I presented or spoke, I would always ask her, what does she think? What could I do better? I spent time listening to podcasts, reading books, and just practicing and putting myself out there in situations where I had to speak.
That is so. Did you take Toastmasters at all? Because I know that's one way for people to get practice. Was there a formal training that you've done?
No formal training. I think I've attended 2 or 3 Toastmasters sessions through the years, but I never just signed up and became a member. It was very sporadic. I may have attended a Toastmasters class one day, say 15 years ago, and then another time 6 years later, I went to one, but I was just drop in and I never stayed. And it was typically because someone invited me. I'm self-taught in most things that I do. I did go to college. I got my degree, but I'm just a perpetual learner. Mm-hmm. And I have the mindset that if someone else can do it, I can too, if I put my mind to it. I just try to find solutions to the problems that I face, and many times for other people. So that has forced me to always be learning something.
I have to ask you this, though, with all the practice and all the exposure that you get, do you still get nervous with any, like even the Twitter spaces or with church?
There are times. And even now to this day, I may be in a space, and if it's unfamiliar people, a new space that I go to, I was interested in the topic, and I'll find myself, I feel my heart begin to race a little bit, the butterflies kick in. And I think it's just normal and natural for any of us when we're in an unfamiliar environment and we don't know what to expect. We don't know how they'll receive us. We don't know if they'll appreciate what we say. So I believe it's inevitable that we feel some type of nervousness. And I've learned to embrace that. When I do have the nervousness or the butterflies, I take that as an indication of humility. It reminds me to remain humble, but it also, I see it as an indication of me taking the moment serious and respecting that moment. Because if I'm expecting people to listen to me, I respect their time enough that I want to try to give them the best that I have to offer.
How do you see business owners or people in business, professionals, where they miss the mark with understanding how valuable this is as a resource? I know you talked about even with relationships and at home, there is a practice of how to express ourselves. Mm-hmm. But in business, I feel like people just take for granted dealing with somebody in a professional manner. What do you see on your side with dealing with that?
What I would say happens for some people, not all. People aren't intentional to understand the impact that they have on situations, the way they present themselves, the way they speak and articulate themselves. So it's easy to get comfortable with who you are as an individual. We feel like what we do works. So it's easy to just do what we do, not realizing that there could be potentially other opportunities available to us if we continuously refine what we do, whether it's the business, our communication, our ability to interact with people. I think we just have to be intentional. And a lot of people don't do that. It isn't even just about what we say when we think about the distinction between confident speaking and public speaking. You don't have to actually say anything sometimes to express and demonstrate confidence. The way we present ourselves, our physical appearance can display our confidence. I put on my hoodie today, and I did that because I wanted people to see a slightly different side. And at the same time, everyone always sees my pictures in suits and things like that. So the connection is important as well. So to be able to experience the humanity of someone, if you always see someone on a stage, always buttoned up in a suit, it gives you a slightly different perspective of that individual. So I thought this was a great way to see the more human side of Tim, with this conversation that we're having today.
Well, there is that pie chart, and words is the smallest slice of the pie, isn't it? Verbal cues versus body language versus
Tone.
I want to ask you, though, how can business owners, how do they become intentional and refined? How do they know to even think that maybe they should practice more?
It's difficult to give a specific answer because everyone has to have that mindset that they want to figure out how can they just be a better version of themselves in every aspect. And communicating is one of those things that is at the forefront and the center of everything that we do. We have to understand that and really think about that. And there's a lot of talk about emotional intelligence these days, in recent years. And it's something that is in line with confident speaking and effective communication. And it allows us to understand how we impact the people around us and how we allow those people around us to impact us as well. And that's one of the reasons I do the space, because as people come and experience what we do in the space, it gives them a reason to think about why I need to be more intentional about improving my communication with others in every aspect of life.
Well, this space is why it's so brilliant, because even if you don't come up to speak, or maybe you're not quite ready, you're still going to learn, because you're going to hear other people who they share the vulnerability of this practice of how we communicate and how we try to practice our communication. With some of our experience, Trevor and I, and working with business owners for the last several years, we have found that people are more reactive than proactive. So do you have any thoughts, or have you experienced anything that, even if you're not like enrolling in a course, what advice might you have for people to just have it as a exercise to practice?
Develop the mindset and commit to yourself to be better. I remember reading an article where Warren Buffett, he was speaking at doing a commencement address, and he made a statement that you could increase your net worth or your earning potential by 50%, I believe it was, just by learning to communicate well. When you think about athletes, the ones that communicate well are the ones that get the endorsement deals, they get the commercials, they get to be broadcasters when their playing careers are over. It's about communicating. So it requires us making the commitment to ourselves that we just want to be better and not settle for the status quo. And sometimes it isn't all that complicated. It's just a matter of doing the simple things over and over. Every now and then when I see a commercial, I may recite the commercial just to see if I can articulate it the same way and give that same feel. So I just do little things that constantly keep my mind thinking about how I communicate. And that's what people have to do is be intentional and figure out what can they do better. And that's why I love the space confident speaking, because it affects every aspect of our lives, no matter what your career is.
I also love everything that you say, the way you say it. It's like, what is he going to say next? Like it's very compelling. Do you hear that? Do people say that to you often?
I've heard people say it on occasion. As you practice and you are intentional about being better at something, eventually you get to a point that you no longer have to think about it. And speaking can be the same way. If we practice, the more we do it, the better we become at it, the easier it becomes. And your brain just understands how to formulate the thoughts. It knows how to pull the information and resources together so that you are able to respond. And when you understand and have that desire to connect with people, it makes it easier to be in that moment and give them the nurturing that they need, to give them the support that they need, to be patient with them. And I understand that everyone doesn't have that. It isn't something that everyone is able to do. But what I do like for people to understand is that everyone has something that they can do better than everyone else, or better than most people. I've been doing this for 20 years, and I still practice to refine my abilities and my skills. I'm always paying attention to people, trying to learn. You'll never hear me brand myself or label myself as an expert in any spaces or anything that I'm doing, because I don't want to create this divide between myself and the people that are listening to me. Like I'm up here and you're down there. I don't ever do that because I don't think it's necessary. And I also feel like even if you aren't considered the expert, you still have value to add. And your perspective is just as important as someone that's considered the expert or the professional in the field, because that's where new ideas, innovations, and inventions come from. They come from people that have a different perspective, that's confident enough to take the chance to effectively communicate what they're trying to do as they're executing and implementing what's on their heart.
This sparks another question. Again, I haven't even looked at the questions that I planned because I'm so enthralled and I'm curious. There's a lot of talk about storytelling and how that's part of the marketing for people. Do you think storytelling it might complicate things when you're just trying to practice and learn and improve?
I feel like we all have the ability to tell stories. If we have an experience we want to share with our friends, we understand how to tell the story because we're connected to that event emotionally. So it just naturally comes out. But it's different when you're in a position where it may not be something that you absolutely love or something that you're totally connected with. And I believe that you have to figure out where you are in the process, understand what it takes to get where you want to be, and work towards those incremental successes. Don't try to do it all at once because it's going to get frustrating and you'll quit. It's inevitable that if you try to do too much too fast, you're going to quit. So I think the storytelling is good to know, good to be able to do. And it's one of those that's almost, I don't know if I would say it's specialized, but it definitely takes a different mindset. Even in interviews, you have a story to tell. You're telling a story in the interviews, but we have to understand it, practice, refine it, and get comfortable with it. And before we know it, it begins to flow. And it's something that you just do without having to think about it.
With all that we've talked about, one of the words you said is respond, which I think is key versus reacting. Have you seen, can you share stories of negative consequences that happened to somebody? And as an example, I'll tell you a tiny little story. It was my parents' 25th wedding anniversary. There was a party at a friend's house and we were there and I was there and I'm the eldest. And then the host of the party said, "Linda, why don't you say a few words?" Because I didn't know. I had no idea. And what happened was after that, I fumbled so badly that my father turned to me and said, "You might want to brush up on some public speaking." I was like, "But I didn't come prepared," and it was very emotional. Because, you want your dad to be proud of you. And here we are at a party and it was a social event and I was not prepared. So do you have anything similar, whether it's something professionally you've seen at work that really resonates with you?
The example that comes to mind is myself, I would say, and this was several years ago. This goes back to being at church. I had been there for a few years already, and I was asked to do communion one Sunday. Here I am, I'm thinking, I've seen this process many times, every week for, multiple years. And all of a sudden, I'm at this point where I'm going around asking, okay, how do you do this? When am I supposed to say this? Or am I supposed to say it this way? And it was an awakening. I don't know if it really made me think that I need to get better at public speaking or speaking, but it did make me realize how different it is when you're the one that everyone is looking to have a message or to share something. So it made me understand that you have to be prepared. So that may mean developing those public speaking skills or just understanding how to tell a story, as you said, or just being able to share your thoughts and feelings. Because sometimes it's as simple as just saying, hey, this is who I am. This is how I feel. And I just want you to understand how I feel. And that particular moment for me made me realize that you just have to be ready. If you stay ready, you don't have to get ready.
Well, the first space that I saw with you was confident speaking, know when to stop speaking. And I think that is its own part of preparation to have that self-awareness of,
Right.
Okay, I'm droning on here because I don't know how to end it. I don't know what I'm saying. I'm not prepared and I don't know how to exit this conversation. And I think I even did this with you and I was like, and that's all that I have to say about that. Thanks for letting me have the mic, because I didn't know how to have a graceful exit because it was so impromptu that I was even there. I think that has to come with practice.
And I think understanding what you want to say, and sometimes people get excited because they've heard something that resonated with them and they have a thought or they are speaking on emotion and they just jump right in, my turn, and they just start letting it flow. And they find themselves somewhere halfway through it, 3-4 minutes in, and they realize that, like you said, they don't know where the runway is to land because they really don't even know exactly where they were trying to go. They just know that they were excited in that moment. And you just have to understand what your point is. You have to understand the point behind what you're saying, because if you don't understand the point, you don't really know when the point has been made, and no one else will understand either. So it's always interesting to see that. And, hosting spaces, interacting with people does require patience sometimes, but I understand that some people will get lost in their thoughts and emotions, and give them that room, because like we said, the confident speaking space is a place to come and practice.
Another example of speaking that I find I struggle with is even if I have questions that I've pre-prepared, I still might not just ask the question. And I have been so guilty of that, probably here today. But anyway, so I digress. All right, this is really my last question. Do you have any resources like books or podcasts that they could learn how to practice and be intentional?
I know Getting to the Point is a book that I've read that I think is good, because it focuses on understanding your message and determining what you want to say. Like even now in spaces, I have a tendency to write down notes if I hear something and I want to respond. I try to give myself some bullet points to help keep me on track. I would also say that, even if they just go online, because the information doesn't change very much at all from book to book, podcast to podcast, the concepts are the same. People are trying to understand how to manage their fear. They talk about engaging your audience. The concepts are the same, but it really comes down to the practice. And if you just do a search for any of the resources, books, and tools that are out there, you're going to find that there are a lot of commonalities. But at the end of the day, it's putting yourself in the position that you get to utilize it, because it's about you and the effort that you put into it that's going to allow you to see the improvement and the growth that you're trying to accomplish. That's something that I do as well. I listen to my own recordings, and I still will listen to my own recordings after all this time, just to see if there's something that I can do differently. As awkward as it is in the beginning, eventually it gets better. You get to a point where, as you practice enough, you stop focusing on the sound of your voice and you start listening to the message. You're trying to understand, did I express my thought the way that I wanted to? And actually, sometimes I hear myself, some of the things I say, and I'm like, oh, that's good. I like that.
We have banners up, but for the audio version of this, where can people find you, and tell us about the spaces so people can tune in?
So Twitter at SimplyTimTV is my Twitter handle. And that's where people can follow my journey on social media, and the Confident Speaking Space, which is on Saturday mornings at 11 a.m. Eastern time. With that, we also try to give people the opportunity to co-host sometimes. Just a new experience. So we had a few people that had never co-hosted before. We just trying to create opportunity with the space on so many different levels. The practice scripts that we do that allow people to go back and hear how well they read a video or movie script, or tongue twisters. We try to make it fun and engaging, so it isn't just about learning. And I'm big on the idea of immersive learning, not just being lectured to, because I personally don't like to be lectured. I need to get engaged and put my hands on it, be a part of it. And that's what the intent and hope is with the space, that people can feel like they were actually a part of something, not just being talked to the entire time. So today, this interview, this conversation, I did not have the questions up front. This is practice. I just put myself out there. So you never know when you may be on the spot like this. So practice, practice, practice.
and look for opportunities that you feel comfortable practicing. If you go to LinkedIn, I did notice how you have your Twitter Spaces typically announced or as a featured post. And also when they go to Twitter, your next or upcoming space is usually a pinned tweet at the top. So it's very easy to find when you're doing it.
You have done an excellent job at this. So I know you made a couple comments earlier about what you may have not done a certain way, but this is your thing for sure.
Well, I appreciate that. It means a lot, Tim. Truly, I have a lot of fun, mainly because I enjoy so much learning from other folks who are doing things that inspire me and that motivate me. And I think interdependence is underrated with how we can learn and grow. So thank you so much. And I will see you in Twitter Spaces on Saturdays at 11 o'clock. And if you were to ask me to co-host, I cannot say I would not do it. No pressure. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome. Thank you, Linda.
Bye-bye.
All right. Bye.